많은 분들이 영어도 많이 이해하시니까 내 생각에는 반가량은 못 잘 이해하시니까 이해 못하시는 분들을 위해서 제가 나중에 서머라이즈를 하겠습니다.
Congratulations on your 39-year anniversary, or as we say in Spanish, felicidades. I was thinking of Revelation 7, which talks about, at the end, all the nations and all the languages will bow before the Lord and worship. As I'm listening to Korean, which I've been to Korea once, but I haven't mastered the language yet. And we minister in Mexico, as Pastor said. We've been there for more than 30 years. Two of our children were born in Mexico, and one of our oldest son, who just got married in Lancaster, close to here, last week, he was 4 months old when we moved to Mexico City, which is one of the largest cities in the world. And we've been involved in church planting there. I wanted to share a few stories. When I lived in Mexico, I guess Ted is always impressed by one of my stories. I won't go into detail about it, but when we lived in Mexico City, because there has been a lot of crime, I was kidnapped for a short while. It's called a kidnap express. And then later, I was held up at gunpoint and had my car stolen. And we ended up leaving Mexico for a short while. So I like to joke with my Mexican friends that I love Mexico, but I'm not sure that Mexico loves me. So now we're living on the border, on the U.S.-Mexico border in the San Diego-Tijuana area, which is the largest binational city in the world, about 5 million people, and 40 million people cross the border every year. In that one, it's the most land border crossing in the world. And we've had the privilege of serving there. We've helped start 6 independent churches, and then we're in the process of starting 4 other churches in that area. And so I wanted to share with you about a couple ministries, and we also are ministering in Cuba. If I have time, I might share about that as well. But there's one couple, we helped start their church about 4 years ago. Their name is Victor and Sol. And a lot of these churches that we're working in are in kind of a poor neighborhoods, urban poor. And they came into a community, and Victor and Sol are very gifted and very loving couple. They're actually taking care of our little dog, Daisy, while we're gone. And Victor he lived in the United States and he speaks English, but he was deported. And he had a drug addiction problem, and he came to Christ. He was in jail. He has this wonderful testimony of how he came to Christ that we don't have time to share right now, but he has this really amazing testimony. And his wife, Sol, who studied, she has an undergraduate in psychology and a master's in education. She was writing him while he was in jail and praying for him because he ended up getting thrown in jail unjustly. And that encouraged him a lot. And he thought, when I get out of jail, I would like to meet this woman, or he had met her, but he would like to get to know her better. And they ended up marrying one another. So, and we're working with them to start a church in Rosarito, which is just south of Tijuana. And one of the things that they're doing in the community, which a lot of our churches do because they are poor areas, is Sol, who used to work in the public school system, decided she really wanted to be able to volunteer in the area for the church. So she stopped working, she stopped making an income, and they're not wealthy people. It's a real sacrifice for her to do this. And she has begun tutoring the students. And these students come from very young people, from like 6 years old to maybe 12 or 13, 14 years old. And they're coming from poor families, so they're not nourished very well. She said that they were coming and they had spots on their faces, like white spots on their faces because they weren't eating very well. So they came, they didn't have a lot of energy when they came, and they started feeding them. They feed them, they give them some eggs and ham or something simple but basic, but also that's nourishing. And then she works with them and she tutors them and she teaches them. And she does that. So they have class in the morning and then in the afternoon, because some of the students go to school in the morning and others go in the afternoon. So they have 2 shifts that come in there. And a lot of these students were failing. They were getting F's in their classes and they weren't doing well. And Sol began to work with them, and now they're doing much better and they're a lot healthier too. She said they come to her in the morning and they say, the first thing they ask her is, what are we going to eat today? So we're excited about that. And there's some people, Victor is a landscaper. He has a landscaping business, but like I said, he's not wealthy, but they give out of their own what they have. And there's also some others that sponsor that ministry and help them to be able to provide meals. But right now they have, I think, 20 students, and they'd like to be able to grow that. So they're trying to figure out ways to train more teachers and tutors and raise some funds for that. But that's kind of emblematic of some of the things that we're involved in, that we see people coming to Christ, and these young people that are coming to the school or the tutoring sessions aren't all involved in the church. A lot of them are not. And they talk to them about Christ and about the church, and some of them, their families will come and they say, at least come once and try it out, you know. And some of them do get involved in the church and do come to Christ. So it's a good way to love on the people and to reach out to them. I wanted to share as well about some ministry that we're doing in Cuba. The Lord's blessed us, my wife and I, over the last couple of years, I guess about 5 years, to minister in Cuba. And if you know anything about Cuba, it's a very oppressed country. I guess somewhat like maybe North Korea, in that very oppressed. The government does not allow freedom. They are able to worship. There are some differences. But a lot of people earn only $25 a month there, no matter if you're a doctor or an engineer. Maybe you might earn $50 a month. And that's how you have to live off of that. And right now in Cuba, because of the problems with Venezuela, they're having a hard time just getting basic needs like bread and chicken and rice and beans, which they eat a lot, cooking oil, some of these things. Dawn and I went together to Cuba about not quite 3 years ago. Our daughter, Hannah, who was 22 years old, she moved to heaven, we like to say. She passed away 2.5 years ago in October of 2016. And we had this trip planned to Cuba in December of 2016. And we decided to go. We weren't sure if that was the best thing to do or not, but we just felt like we should continue to minister. We went there and we met this one couple, Mario and Yanni. And Yanni was about 20 years old, and she reminded Dawn of our daughter. Plus our daughter was, she loved to minister. We could see her ministering and sharing the love of Christ and praying for people. She loved to pray for people. So Dawn saw Yanni and she just started crying, and which made Yanni feel a little bit uncomfortable. And she was wondering why she was crying, and then we got to know them and share with them. And they've become like very close to us. Mario and Yanni, they call us their parents, mom and dad. And she recently lost her mom, Yanni did, due to cancer. And so both Dawn and Yanni suffered losses of people very dear to them. We've been able to minister to them in that way. And one other couple that we got to know, I mean, there's a lot of couples in Cuba, and we love ministering there. We love ministering to the Cubans. Luis and Mai. we met them, and they started sharing with us their story and all that they had suffered through, and we just started crying when we heard their story. We had never met anybody that had suffered for the gospel as much as they had. And they told us about how a few years back they felt like God was calling them to start a church, to start a ministry in a community that was a little ways from where they lived, and they had to walk, and it's very hot in Cuba, and it's hard to get suntan lotion, and so they were walking like 8 miles a day. I don't remember if it was 8 miles one way or if it was 8 total, but they were walking long distances in the hot sun every day. And they didn't have suntan lotion, so Mai was getting sunspots. She still has them on her legs when it gets, so we try to take her suntan lotion when we go there because they have a hard time getting it. And they started knocking on the doors, and they asked the people if they were interested in studying the Bible and learning about Jesus. And everybody said no. They were all saying no, and they did it for a number of days, knocking on all the doors. But they really felt like that's what God wanted them to do, so they continued to do it. They continued walking all that distance in the hot sun, back and forth. And finally, they got to the very last house, and they knocked on the door, and the lady answered the phone, or the door, and she had 2 children, girls, in wheelchairs. And she said she was angry at God because of her daughters being in wheelchairs. But the daughters overheard, and they said that they would like to study the Bible. So that's how the gospel entered into that community. And so, we have the privilege, my wife and I, we've been through some difficult times, but we have the privilege of sharing the gospel with some wonderful people. It's life-giving for us to be able to minister to people and to see the sacrifices so many make so that Christ might be known. And so we appreciate this opportunity to share with you. Prayer is, essential for what we do. I brought some prayer cards that you can have if you'd like. It also has my email, and we have a blog, and then some brochures. So if you'd like those, you're welcome to have them, and we'd love to speak with you later. Thank you.
너무나 감사를 드립니다. 지난주도 우리가 장 선교사님 모시고 선교 보고를 받고 이번 달은 5월달이구나 계속 은혜를 받고 있습니다. 우리 선교사님께서 처음에 계시록 7장에 나오는 모든 나라 모든 언어가 하나님을 섬기라는 말씀을 하면서 우리는 이제 스페인시말로 이렇게 이야기를 하시면서 30년 넘게 멕시코에서 사역을 했고 그곳에서 2명의 자녀를 낳고 지난주에 랭캐스터에서 결혼한 그 딸은 4살 되었을 때 멕시코로 데려갔었다라고 말씀하십니다. 그 교회 개척에 힘쓰고 계시고 그 텟과 이야기를 나눌 때 텟이 감명을 받은 이야기 중에 하나가 선교사님이 멕시코에서 납치를 당했고 그냥 총을 거두는 일이 있었는데 당신 생각에는 당신은 멕시코를 사랑하는데 멕시코가 자기를 사랑하지 않는 것 같다고 말씀하시는데요. 500만이나 사는 그 많은 그 도시에서 있으면서 수백, 400명 되는 사람들이 멕시코를 지나서 미국으로 들어오려는 그런 지역에서 사역을 하는데 4개 교회를 이렇게 개척하시고 쿠바에서도 사역하셨는데 4년 동안 그 빅토르 소르라는 그 사람 같이 이제 사역을 하면서 참 가난한 그 사람이 강아지가 있는데 이제 죽었지만 데이지라는데 우리 강아지 이름도 얼마 전에 몇 년 전에 죽은 데이지하고 이름이 똑같아서 놀랐는데요. 그 남자가 그 처음에 마약으로 애딕돼가지고는 감옥에 있는 동안 그 아내는 심리학을 전공해서 로스리또라는 이름인지 정확히 기억을 못하겠는데 이름이 그 가난한 자들을 위해서 사역하면서 6살부터 12, 13, 14살까지 공부를 가르치는, 근데 그들이 영양이 너무나 부족해가지고 얼굴에 이제 버슴이 피는 그 아이들한테 아침 그리고 저녁 2번에 걸쳐서 가르치는 사역을 하는데, 많은 아이들이 낙제를 하는 게 매일 참석하지 못해 결석하기 때문에 낙제를 하는데, 다니면서 아이들이 점점 건강해진다는 겁니다. 왜냐하면 아침에 와서는 제일 먼저 물어보는 말이 오늘 무엇을 먹어요? 그래서 이 빅토르는 랜드스케이핑, 잔디 깎는 일을 하면서 그들을 도와주는 사역을 하면서 약 매일 20명가량이 참 말씀을 통해서 점점 교회에 봉사하게 되는 놀라운 일들이 있다는 겁니다. 또 지난 5년 동안 이제 쿠바에서 사역을 하는데, 북한처럼 쿠바도 자유로운 나라가 아니라 하나님 앞에 예배드리는데 제약을 받고, 의사든 기술자든 변호사든 모든 사람들이 그냥 5불 받고 일을 하는, 한 달에 50불로 사니까 다 가난한 사역을 하는데, 3년 전에 우리 선교사님의 딸 해나가 20살 나이로 이제 죽었고, 마리아 얀이라는 아가씨 20살 죽은 하나와 비슷한 나이 아가씨를 만났는데, 사역자들을 좋아하고 잘 따르고, 또 그의 어머니가 최근에 암으로 돌아가셨는데요. 많이 와서 사역을 도와주고 여러 부부들을 만나서 사역을 하는데, 루이스 마이크라는 친구랑 이야기를 하면서 그가 하나님께서 자기에게 교회를 개척하라 라는 그런 사명을 주셔가지고 매일 8마일이라는 그 더운 날씨에 걸으면서 이곳저곳 다니면서 문을 두들기고 복음을 전하다 보니까 오른쪽에 선블락 로션을 바르지 않아서 이 다리에 문제가 생기는 기 때문에 다음에 이제 선블락 로션을 꼭 갖다 주고자 하는데요. 이 한 번은 그 사람들이 한 집을 방문하였는데 두 아이를 둔 그 어머니가 하나님께 불만이 가득한 이유가 그 한 아이가 휠체어로 살아가는 것 때문에 너무나 불만했지만, 그 말씀을 통해서 점점 하나님의 사랑을 깨닫는 놀라운 사역을 하고 계시면서 여러분들도 그 함께 기도에 동참하실 수 있으면 좋을 것 같다. 그래서 프레이어 카드를 여러분 필요하시면 가져가라고 말씀을 해주셨습니다. 다 같이 일어나셔서 찬송가 251장을 찬양한 후에 우리 선교사님께서 베네딕션을 해주시겠습니다.